All right, we are live. Welcome back to the Give and Go Show, presented by GQ and MJ Tinos. We've been calling these past few episodes preseason previews or preseason chatter if you're looking at them on YouTube. Unfortunately, we are doing this last preseason preview after the season has already started because I messed up the timing on when we were going to be doing these episodes. So we're recording this episode on October 21st. This is a Thursday, so the season is 2 days deep at this point. I think almost every team has played at this point. I think the Heat have not played yet.
Hawks play tonight too. They haven't played yet.
Hawks play tonight. There's a couple teams left that need to play tonight. I don't know if the Jazz have played yet.
The
Jazz played
night.
yesterday. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So just a couple teams to go. A couple of them pretty huge teams. I mean, obviously Heat and Hawks both teams that I think most people have in their playoffs and some people have as potential Eastern Conference finalists. Let's just jump into it. Let's talk about the games that went on last night, and then we'll jump into our preseason previews for what we're going to be doing this week, which is the Central and the Northwest divisions. Matt will, of course, be doing the Central division because it's on the East Coast and East Coast, and I will do the Northwest division because I'm on the West Coast. Matt,
but just like most yeah.
Let's talk about
it. Like most Democrats on the East Coast, we're centrists, right? We'll say centrists.
Yeah, there we go. We're centrists.
I'll get the Central Division.
I don't know if we are centrists, but yeah, I like where your head is at.
I'll wear my Bernie hat on the podcast.
Got it. Okay.
Another stream.
Right.
So
off to the races.
I was just watching all the games, and I noticed that the great thing was there were certain teams that we talked about that I want to immediately add 10 wins to, like the Kings, like the Cavs, who we get to talk to today, which is awesome. Hornets look great. Grizzlies look great. And a lot of it was, and even the Celtics-Knicks game was so exciting last night. And what I noticed was that there were so many great individual performances that carried guys to these wins, and they would not stop. Evan Fournier on the Knicks.
Oh my God!
Great
what a
preseason
night.
acquisition.
31
What a
night
points.
for Fournier. I hope people don't.
He had 18 before the fourth. I
hope people do not Google his name though, because we know what happens when you Google his name. Don't do it. Nothing good is going to come of it.
So Evan Fournier had a great game, but Jalen Brown on the opposite end was balling out. He had 47 points, which is a Celtics season opener record. And same thing on the other side with Fournier. For at least someone coming to the team, their first game on the opener, setting the record there. But Charlotte was down by 20 in the third quarter. And then they ended up coming back and taking the lead before the fourth. And at that point, it was a back and forth. But Gordon Hayward, which we were talking about, if healthy, can be a really good player. He was a dude at the end of the game. They gave every possession. He was ISOing, getting buckets.
Absolutely took over the game in the fourth
insane.
Quarter. Just incredibly impressive performance from Gordon Hayward. And before we got going, Matt and I were talking about how we were kind of jumping around the league yesterday and kind of watching as many games as we could or catching as many quarters of basketball as we could. I watched the entirety of the fourth quarter of that game, and I saw bits and pieces of the game leading up to that point. Gordon Hayward, slow start. Okay, took him a while to get his legs under him. I couldn't really tell if he was trying to exert himself too much. You could definitely see a little hesitation in him. And then, he kind of just flipped a switch, and he was like, I'm going to go try and win this game. And I am going to try and win this game. And he did. He was like prime Jazz Hayward for a little bit there. Who the Celtics thought they were going to be getting a few years ago, a guy that could just take over games. And he could beat you in the post, and he could beat you from three, and he could beat you from the mid-range, and he's forcing steals, and he's forcing deflections. I mean, I wish Gordon Hayward was healthier, because just an exceptional player when he is healthy. And he obviously, because of his health concerns, hasn't gotten his due the past few years the way that we thought he would.
And he's a guy that can straight up lead an entire offense, not just if you need an ISO bucket and you're having everyone go to the side, you pick one guy to pick and roll or something like that. He can generate offense. And when I was looking in that fourth quarter, LaMelo, who was on fire, who had 31, who also had sort of a slow start, was deferring the ball to him. Everyone knew on that team when they need a bucket, get the ball to Gordon Hayward. Ja Morant, love the cornrows. He looks like Allen Iverson out there watching the highlights. And
Yeah.
the dude has like a Jordan-esque aspect to him when he finishes around the rim because he hangs in the air so long. That alley-oop was like highlight of the night for me. Dude had 37 points. And he was another guy like Gordon Hayward that I noticed when they needed a bucket. Another game that was super close. And it was actually a Grizzlies Cavs, which I'll talk about the Cavs later because they
Oh
balled out
man,
too.
what jersey do you
But-
not own? I swear to God.
I try to collect them all. I'm a fan of the league, Griffin.
Yeah,
I need
Ash
I need
Ketchum
a
out here. Gotta
need an
collect them all.
NBA Shield hat.
Yeah,
But
just like you're the Rob Lowe of the NBA.
well, this is actually one of my first. I think the Jason Kidd. I had a Jason Kidd authentic jersey, but that one I cannot fit in anymore. And I thought I was going to be a growing boy as a child, so I got like a LeBron jersey with the length 2 times.
Right.
And
right.
it looks like a dress still on me, but you know, you can only
but
see me from this down.
jerseys are one piece of clothing that you can kind of swing that with. My first jersey, and I certainly don't still have it because I did grow after childhood. I, like many kids, and I know we're kind of moving over to jersey talk very briefly. I, like every single kid in my kindergarten class, had a Michael Jordan Bulls jersey because we were in kindergarten in 97, I guess, 97, 98.
Literally the peak.
Yeah, the end of the Jordan years, and then obviously, like a lot of kids in DC, I had a Michael Jordan Wizards jersey.
Yeah,
but
so
I don't think
fresh.
those got as much play as the Bulls jersey. I mean, you couldn't go anywhere.
I've seen the
for a
black
while
jerseys, the
when
red
we were kids.
jerseys, like
Yeah.
the white. Like it was just you saw them. Every
Jordan
single
jerseys were
version
everywhere.
of that Bulls
I need one
jersey.
of those black jerseys. Those black jerseys are heat. I feel like a lot of people don't have that one. Everyone goes with the standard red, but those black ones are fucking nice.
Yeah, I don't like white jerseys because I get them. You know, I always want to eat something when I wear jerseys. I won't wear like my white Cowboys jerseys often, and it's because I'm an Italian too, so just a lot of the red sauce doesn't work.
See, if I'm wearing a jersey, I'm probably at like a festival or the beach or something like that. So the only thing I'm doing is drinking, and pretty much almost all my jerseys, now that I think about it, are white. I've got a white Bulls jersey, which has someone else's blood on it. It's a long story. I've got a white Wizards Gilbert Arenas jersey, which would make a lot of sense to have somebody else's blood on it. Yeah. I've got a couple white Kobe jerseys. I've got a white Team USA Kobe jersey that I bought for $6 on the Ocean City Boardwalk. Fake as fuck, but I don't care. Yeah, there's a lot of great jerseys.
Well, I was gonna say, so not just kind of staying on topic with the jerseys and with the games last night. Wizards
Wizards
really
looking
good.
nice.
They looked good.
Let's get it out
Give
there.
the eyes emoji. You know.
Yeah, big time eyes emoji. Let's get it out there before we get a little bit further into the evening or into the week, and this changes. Currently ranked number 1 in defense in the NBA, the Washington Wizards. Love to see it.
When you look at their team and the way they're constructed and the lineups that they were running out there, like Spencer and Bradley is going to be a problem. They're like too long, athletic. Like a lot of people play small ball in the league too. So you could look at them and you could even position Dinwiddie based on his height as like a small forward, power forward in a lot of these like small ball lineups. Grizzlies were running a lot of it last night. And yet those are their point guard and shooting guards. And they're both quick. They can make the right pass. They can score at any time. Like you have those guys. Kyle Kuzma was balling out. Like he played really well. Shout out to Kuz and the Kings. Everybody was eating in our.
You want to give Kuz his dap? All right, good. Because
Yeah.
I feel like no one ever gives Kuz his dap, and I want to make sure that's recognized.
He was plus 22 last night. He played really well.
Something like that. He was the second highest plus minus on the team. I think Beal was plus 23 and Kuz was plus 22. Obviously plus minus. You know. Taken in a vacuum doesn't mean a whole lot on a game by game basis. It's more of a
I actually really
stat.
like plus minus if we're going to talk that.
It's a good full season stat, but oftentimes you have a guy, a LeBron James will have a bad night where he's got like an awful plus minus, and it'll be like because he may have had a great individual performance, but the other 4 starters he was with got blown out of the water, and the other team, maybe they're playing the Warriors or the Nets or something like that, just had an all-time offensive performance. So it doesn't really give you on a game-by-game basis idea of how good a guy is. But taken over a season, it's a great stat because it shows how they influence the game by game.
I mean, I think it's one where you could also see the impact of the player. Like, I like plus minus because it can impact the Lou Williams, who's a 6-man, or Buddy Hield this year, who's a good 6-man,
Sure.
or, like a lot of guys that off the bench or wherever they are in their rotation are going to make an impact. Because, if the Lakers lose a game, LeBron will probably have the worst plus minus because he's on the court when the other team's best players are on there and making really good runs.
Right.
So I'm sure none of the Nets starters or bench players had really good plus minuses last time they played the Bucks. But typically you could see like an impact of a player who's not the superstar, like the superstar. And I was going to say, I usually find that when the Lakers were losing last year, LeBron had like very close to even plus minus, and then everyone else would just have like.
So LeBron may have been a bad example on my part because usually his plus minus is. I mean, like it's very
just because when LeBron's on the court, they're not getting like he's not going to give up a run of like 10, 12, 14.
And part of that is his ability level. Part of it is also how much he slows the game down when he's out there. There aren't going to be huge runs from the other team. If he feels like they're getting beat, he will slow the game down and he will drag it out and he will force you to try and beat them with like turnovers.
I'll say it's really unless like he's running out on the court, sorry to cut you off again, but I feel like LeBron, when he sees people running or if he's running up the court, he'll push it, but he does like to slow it down a lot.
I mean, he loves to get out and run when he's got the supporting cast around him that can get out and run. But he's also, and you see these stats every year about guys like him, John Wall, Russell Westbrook, about how little they move on the court or like how slow they move on the court in terms of like average speed. And it's because they spend so much time basically just pounding the ball into the ground and slowing the game down to try and make sure that they're taking advantage of every opportunity that presents themselves. Obviously, LeBron is at a much higher level of that than John Wall and even of Russell Westbrook. But these guys have similar things that they do to kind of conserve energy and slow the game down and make good possessions happen in the last 8 seconds of the shot clock. He's obviously just the master at it. Like he's the best. And you don't have to call him the GOAT if you don't want to. I mean, a lot of people obviously
King James
up in the air. I don't think you can. I don't think there is a GOAT. Is really my opinion on this. I think there's like 5 guys that are right there with each other. But he is the best current player. Even if he's lost a step, it's just the reality. I
feel like we can break social. I feel like the reason that there's arguments, it's like, why haven't people just said GOAT by era? Like, I guess
some
people are obsessed but they're obsessed with like the whole narrative of like, you have to be the best at this sport ever. But I feel like we really should break it up in like eras. Like LaDainian Tomlinson might not have been the greatest running back of all time, but when I was a kid, LT was the best. I did the little, celebration at every end zone. And like, same thing with basketball players. Like, if LeBron was in any era, you could say he would. If Steph Curry just went to the like 80s, 70s, 80s when they first invented the 3-point line, he would have been by far the greatest player of all time, just pulling up from half court and sinking shots. But it is what it is. And like, as we've moved on, like people start training for basketball and doing drills that they wouldn't have done in high school, college at like 4 or 5 years old now.
I think a lot of it is, so I've got a couple answers to this, or a couple responses to this, let me say. Part of it is hot take culture, where everything has to be either the best of something or the worst of something in order to get airtime. And so every show on TV, every Twitter discussion, every IG discussion, every Twitch stream, whatever people are talking about, they want to talk about the best things and the worst things. They don't want to talk about the stuff in the middle or the stuff that's top 4 or whatever. They want to say this is the best, this is the worst, this is why. That's part of it. Part of it is also basketball, as we know it, fairly young sport. So it's kind of difficult for us, and not even necessarily for us, but for the generation right before us who were, teenagers, adults during the Jordan generation, and, now into middle age during the LeBron generation. And even if you want to go back further than that, you've got the people that were around during like the Bill Russell and Bill Russell and Wilt years. Yeah. There's these generational gaps where the majority of people that have been watching basketball for the entirety of their adult lives, they're still alive. So if we get to a point, 40, 50 years down the line where a lot of the people that watched Magic and Bird in their prime are dead. Everyone that watched, Kareem in his prime is dead. Everyone that watched Wilt and Russell in their prime is dead. And the people that watched Jordan in their prime are dying off. And the LeBron generation is now in their 60s or 70s.
Ooh.
There might be some amazing players that are, and LeBron may still be playing at that point. So who knows? He may be 100 years old and still taking the court every night.
Him and Tom Brady.
Yeah. But I think we're going to get to a point where all of these players that we say are the best ever, that no one can ever be better than, have been such a part of basketball history that you're going to have to take it as a by-era thing, because no one's going to remember what they looked like when they played, and it's all going to be reading stuff off stat sheets.
Yeah.
Like right now, we're still in a point where a lot of people are alive that watched all of the people that are considered the greats. Obviously, you watched like Wilt and Russ the least because they weren't on TV as much. But like, you have people that watched every Kareem game and every Magic game and every Bird game and every Jordan game and every LeBron game. And my guy, every Kobe game. But
you see that a lot where it's like you want to give people their roses while they're playing or while they're alive. And so it's like, people will probably look at a James Harden who some people would say doesn't have the most aesthetically pleasing game, especially because he slows it down and uses the free throw line to get him points and get in rhythm. And they'll look back and be like, this dude was averaging 36 points, like 9 rebounds and 8 assists, if not like 11 assists at
on
times.
insane
And
efficiency.
It's like, yeah. And like
on
all of
the
those
best
like
efficiency of all
advanced
time.
statistics. Yeah. Like he's going to be one of those players. And you're right. Where the GOAT discussion kind of has like shortfalls and pitfalls is like, you're not going to be able to see the players and hype them up like we are today. And especially the guys in the media today. But I, could do this for 2 hours, but I think we have some divisions to talk about.
We do. Let me just say one more thing. I think they said yesterday, because they're doing the NBA 75 right now, 75 players for 75 years of the NBA. I think, I want to say, because I only listened to it out of like one ear. I think they said Harden made the top 25 of the NBA 75. I think, because he was talking to a reporter after the Nets game. And he was like, they were like, you're on the 75 list. And he was like, oh, that's dope. And I want to say the guy said you're in the top 25, which,
damn.
I mean, there's been some great shooting guards in
I saw he had a
league.
really good reaction to it. I didn't watch the video. I knew that it was like his reaction to 20 or 75, but I didn't know that he was in the top 25.
I think they said he's in the top 25. I might have to rewatch it, but I'm pretty sure that's what they said. Regardless, I think it's, I don't know if I'd necessarily say 25, but I also wouldn't say not the top 25. Like, I think he's somewhere in that, 25 to 40 range. He's pretty much guaranteed, like at this point, probably a top 4 shooting guard ever. Mike, Kobe, and then between Jerry West and Dwayne Wade, and then James Harden. So he's top 4 or 5, and there's arguments to be made that even if he hasn't won it all, he's better than D Wade ever was. And who knows where Jerry West falls, because Jerry West shits on himself all the time.
He's the logo.
He's the logo. I was talking about this the other day about how Jerry West.
This guy?
Yeah, that guy. How he has such a low opinion of himself despite winning literally at every level of basketball. He's won as a coach. He's won as an executive. He's won as a player development guy. He's won as a player.
When the Lakers got rid of him, it could arguably be one of their worst calls. He went to the Clippers, and then the Clippers were nasty, and they started to become an actual threat when Jerry West went there.
Yeah,
insane.
All right, we've talked enough about we've talked enough about rankings. We'll talk about this over the course of the season. Obviously, we're going to talk about where we rank players and who's having good seasons and all that stuff like that. But this is our last preseason preview, so let's get into it. Like I said, Matt's going to be doing the Central Division. I'm going to be handling the Northwest Division. Just like every other week, we're going to talk through some of the players, talk through some of the difference makers, kind of say where we think they're going to finish this season, especially in comparison to where Vegas has them finishing. And Matt, let's start with you on the East.
Let's do it. So we're going to go bottom to top again. And so I'm going to start with the Detroit Pistons. And so they're going to be an exciting team. I didn't get to see them last night with Cade Cunningham, who was the number 1 pick of the draft, Oklahoma State point guard. He's going to be a big, impact player there. But they have a lot of good pieces. Their projected starters and their depth chart on ESPN right now is Killian Hayes, Cade Cunningham, Sadiq Bey, Jeremy Grant, and Isaiah Stewart. Jeremy Grant had a great game last night, and he's a great piece from OKC. On the bench, they got Corey Joseph, Frank Jackson, Josh Jackson, Kelly Olynyk, who as
Oh
a
God, I hate him. But
somewhat Wizards
he's good at
fan,
basketball. He's good at
he's
basketball.
good at
but I hate him.
basketball, but so annoying. And I do not like him either, but he is a great piece on a team. And then Hamidou Diallo, who, it's just a piece to fill out the starters and bench. New additions got Cade, Olynyk, and Grant. Draft picks. The one to highlight really is Cade Cunningham at number 1. They picked some other guys, JT Thor, Isaiah Livers, and Luke Garza, but none of them, logged any minutes last night in their opener. I don't know if they'll make the rotation or if they've made their roster at this point. Last year's record, they were 26-46, which is not that good. Let me see. It was 15th in the NFC Eastern Conference, so not that great. Yeah. Their Vegas over-under for this year is 25.5. I have them at 24-58. They were one of the older franchises.
You have them with a worse record this year.
Worst record.
In a longer season, you have them winning less games.
I do.
Losing more games. You think they're taking a step back?
I think they're taking a step back because other teams in their division took a step up from last year. And that's the only reason I give them a step back. And clearly, out of the other teams in the division, this is the one that has the most, I think, rebuild kind of vibe to it. I mean, the number 1 team in this division is the Bucks, who unfortunately I have to say great things about on this podcast. I keep saying podcast on the stream.
It's podcast, stream, show, call whatever you want to call it. They're all the same thing at this point.
This vessel for me to talk about basketball with Griffin, which I enjoy.
Yeah. We'll call it the experience.
But I just think with the other teams, like the Pacers are consistently solid, which will be like a second, third in the division, first, if not every year. Bucks are number 1. Bulls have made a lot of acquisitions. And I'm wearing the jersey, but I also do really like where the Cavs are going. I'm pretty bullish on the Cavs this year. So I just have the Pistons. I don't think they're going to get a lot of easy wins in the division. They didn't play Cade and got the loss. I think that it's going to be a year where they try different things out in their lineups and just try to get, developments or players as many minutes as possible. A lot of old franchises in the Central Division. They were founded in 1948 with championships in 88, 89, the Bad Boys, OG Bad Boys, and 03, the revamp. Ben Wallace, Rip Hamilton with the face mask.
Yeah.
I love that team. Chauncey Billups.
Not the coolest ever guy to wear a face mask. Got to give that to Heat LeBron, but
I was gonna say definitely LeBron.
Yeah, definitely the most like Dr. Doom looking motherfucker of all time.
I'd say Rip made it cool, but then it was
Rip's thing. Like he was a little renowned for it, and then LeBron took something else from Detroit after already stealing their playoff dreams from him. They've had some nasty teams.
Yeah, they've had some really good teams. They're definitely a team that historically likes to slow it down, play defense, make you work for every bucket.
They play a little bit of bully ball, yeah.
But I
don't know about this current roster though. I don't think this current roster is really a bully ball roster. I don't think.
Not exciting.
I think it's a much more So here's what I think about the Pistons. I do think they're going to be better than the Cavs this year. I think the Cavs are a mess. I think the Cavs have a couple really good players. I think Garland and Sexton are definitely the wave of the future for the Cavs. And without getting too far into it, maybe Jared Allen is too if they decide to pay him. But overall, I think the Cavs are not even a work in progress. They're just a mess. They don't know what they're doing. They're putting out a 3-center lineup, which. Obviously, again, because the season has started.
We'll get to it. I'm bullish.
Yeah. We know this because the season has started, and they did this last night. The Pistons, a lot of young guys, a lot of really good role players. I don't think that they're a good team. I don't think they're at that level yet. I don't think they're at that level probably for another 2 or 3 years. But I think they've got a really, really good set of role players and a lot of really good prospects who, through sheer basketball ability, are going to win some games that they shouldn't. I think if Cade is healthy, he's going to win them some games they shouldn't win. I think Jeremy Grant is one of the best players at his position in the league. He's a guy that can do basically everything and defend at an incredible level. I'm really excited to see what Sadiq Bey becomes. And like I said, I mean, they've got Kojo, they've got Frank Jackson, they got Kelly Olynyk, a guy that I don't like, but a guy who can play a little bit of a Swiss Army knife role. And
I hate him, but I respect him.
I don't respect his look. I don't like what he does with his hair or his facial hair, but he's good at basketball and he makes winning plays. You have them. What do you have them at this year? You have them at 24
I'm
and
at
58.
24 and 58. They're gonna lose a lot of games.
I think they're gonna be closer to 30 wins. I think Vegas has them at 25 and a half. I'm not gonna take them at 30. I'll say they're gonna win 28, 29 games. So I will take the over. But I think 24 is just, I don't want to say it's disrespectful, but it's negative. It is a negative take.
Dwayne Casey, I do really like. I thought he was a great coach. I mean, obviously, plenty of coaches and players' careers were ruined by LeBron. So how much can you like blame on that? But I mean, it just sucks again because they got Kawhi and stuff like right after he left. I think it's one of those like Dwayne Casey like helped to get the Raptors back to the winning culture, and then they just reached the peak without him. But I think that, he's the coach that can get the Pistons up to that point. I just don't think it's this.
Dwayne Casey's a great mid-level coach. I mean, I know people hate him, and there's a lot of valid reasons to think that he's not the guy to get you over the hump, but he's good for prospect development, and he's good for turning you into a playoff team, a low-tier playoff team, but a playoff team nonetheless. Before we continue, I do want to give shout-outs to some people in chat. Larva, thanks for being here. What's up?
I'm going to take a little break while you do that
go do you. Yeah, go to the little girls' room. Larva, thanks for being here if you're still here. Gents, as always, appreciate you being here. Glad you got us up on your big screen. Giraffe choreographer, our mod, appreciate you being in the chat, man. Appreciate you hanging out. Yes, Sexton. Not sure if you know this, but the Sexton-Garland combo is called Sexland. That's what people refer to them as. And Ian, our resident Pistons fan friend, appreciate you being here as well, man. Appreciate you tuning in to the show. I know that we don't really have the take on the Pistons that you want to hear, but you guys are in a development year, and there's nothing wrong with that. You blew up the team a little bit. You're kind of rebuilding your entire organizational culture. First-time caller, long-time listener. Love to hear it, man. I don't think the Pistons are winning 40 games. I think the East is far too deep this year for the Pistons to win 40 games. But, I was going to say, key injuries to a few teams and that could happen. I still don't think that's happening. I don't think it's happening, man. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like this does not need to be a championship year for you guys, much like it's not for the Wiz, much like it's not for the majority of the league. It's a development year for a lot of teams, and in a lot of ways, development years are a lot of fun to watch. I loved the Lakers' development years before LeBron got there. Obviously, I loved that LeBron came and won a championship, but being able to watch guys like Lonzo and Ingram and Josh Hart and Kyle Kuzma and D'Lo and all those guys, like watch them develop on the Lakers, ton of fun. Did I think that they were going to win a title together? No, I fucking didn't. I thought there was no chance. I thought we were going to have to trade half of them for a star player to win. Lo and behold,
that's too.
We traded for the literal star player, and because they developed a year. So, to my point, Ian, I don't think you guys are winning 40 games. I don't think you're a playoff team. Matt's got you at 24 wins. I've got you at I'm going to give you the one extra. I'll say you're at 29. I'm not going to say you're at 28. I'm going to say you're 29 wins. So I think you're better than Vegas thinks you are. And Vegas makes their money on thinking teams are like at a very specific level. So I'm rooting for you guys. I hope you're good. Basketball is better when the Pistons are good, just like it's better when the Knicks are good, just like it's better when the Celtics and the Lakers are good. When those classic teams are good, basketball is more exciting.
I apologize, Ian, for disrespecting the Pistons.
No, there's no need to apologize. You're giving your take, and
just my honest take.
Ian's gonna slide in your DMs and be like, "Yo, man, heard you talking shit. Heard you were about that life. Guess who's from D-Town?" So it might happen. Before we continue, Giraffe choreographer, he says he's just here to convince me to start streaming Quiplash. I don't see that happening anytime soon, but But, if there's enough interest, if people start watching the show and we get to a point where people are tuning in regularly, maybe we'll do, game nights or some weekend stuff or something like that. Maybe we'll have a good time with it. Ian's apparently a huge Quiplash guy. Who knew? Probably could have guessed it. Anything else that you want to say about the Pistons before we move on?
That's it. I'm just really excited to see Cade Cunningham. I mean, really exciting player, first pick of the draft. I think that he's going to have some ups and downs, but they're going to be where I watch the highlights. Jeremy Grant is also a baller. I've always liked him when he played for OKC. I think he's going to have a good impact there. So, I mean, unfortunately, 24 wins, but I'm going to be watching their highlights.
Jeremy Grant was a guy that I really wanted the Wizards to trade for. Obviously, last year he was bandied around a lot in trade talks. It was like, which team is going to get Jeremy Grant? Which team is going to get the forward that can do everything and also defend 4 positions?
Yeah.
And I think he's kind of in a. Let me talk about him for 1 sec. I think he's a little bit. He's not as high flying or as prone to big plays as a guy like Aaron Gordon. But I think that they have a lot of similarity in their game. I think Jeremy Grant probably has the higher ceiling, especially considering some of the injuries that Gordon has had and the Magic stunting his development for a number of years. But they're those two guys that, there's probably 25 rosters in the league, if not all 30, that would appreciate having a guy like an Aaron Gordon or a Jeremy Grant because they're able to do so many things at a good level. They're not going to be great at anything, but if you're good at pretty much every offensive aspect and you're a great defender, like, you're going to get the bag. You're going to get paid. That's my thing about Jeremy Grant. Aaron Gordon, I like the two of them. I try and get them on fantasy every year. I think in at least 2 of my leagues, I've got at least one of them. So I'm pretty excited to see what kind of season they have. Let's jump over to the Northwest. We're going to talk about my number 5 team, and this should come as no surprise to anyone based off what they've done to their team the past couple of years. I'm taking the OKC Thunder in 5th place. Vegas has them at 23.5 wins. I'm going to take the under. I'm going to slam that under. I think they're going to win 20 games this year. I do not think they're going to be good. I don't think, and not
hot on both of these teams.
No, we're not. We're not high on them. I don't even so much think that they don't have talented players in their roster because I do think they've got talented pieces. SGA, obviously, super talented guy. Lou Dort, I think, is going to be a great complementary piece, whether it's on the Thunder or another team in the next couple of years. Josh Giddey, I think, if he develops in the right way, he's going to be a fucking problem. Derek Favors obviously has had a lot of great years, and I think he's still a super good player. I don't really know how he fits this Thunder team outside of, he might be their second best player, but I don't really know what they have him for because they could probably trade him elsewhere and get some value for his name for a team that needs a scorer that can play defense. But this Thunder team is not trying to win. They're accruing as many assets as they can. They're collecting draft picks like they're Infinity Stones. A lot of these draft picks may not end up panning out for them because a lot of them are from teams that are going to be playoff teams. So they're not going to get a lot of lottery picks out of this. But they lose a lot of games. They have their own pick. They've got a bunch of picks that are in the top 20, I believe. They're going to go through it the similar way that the Sixers went through the process, where they're going to try and hit on enough guys that it justifies being historically bad. There's really not that much that we can say about them outside of what we just said about the Pistons. It's going to be a development year. Difference being, for the Thunder, a lot of these guys are probably not going to be on the team in 2 years, whereas the Pistons are probably going to try and just build on their current lineup and coach them up to a level where they're playoff contenders. I think looking at their lineup, there's maybe 3 or 4 guys here that are going to be here in a few years. Aaron Wiggins is a guy that I'm really excited to see what he can do. He's on a 2-way contract. I'm biased. I want to see Aaron Wiggins do well. But I hope he gets some burn on the NBA team considering they're going to be trying to lose games. And a guy like him is going to help them lose games because he's not there yet.
When you want to talk about like biggest difference maker for this team, I would say definitely SGA. But when it comes to difference makers, I think of Sam Presti. And so this season's going to hurt. It's going to hurt for the Thunder, but he has done an amazing job hitting on his picks. I think, he literally picked Katie, Westbrook, and Harden. So like he's a
Sam
great
Presti.
executive.
Sam Presti is who people think Danny Ainge is.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
Danny Ainge,
Danny Ainge on
fortunately,
trades, they're like, oh, he fleeces people on trades,
yeah,
blah blah blah. They talk about the Isaiah Thomas, Kyrie, which Kyrie's not playing.
right. Danny
So
Ainge also got to do that on the second biggest historical franchise in basketball in a market that certain guys like Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving wanted to play it.
mm,
Sam Presti does this shit in Oklahoma City that no one wants to go there, least of all NBA players. Like, this is not a place that you're not going there for vacation. Much like Joakim Noah's whole speech about Cleveland, most people would rather go to Cleveland than they would rather go to
then
Oklahoma City. Like,
Oklahoma
it's just
City.
not happening. The only thing you go there for is Thunder games, and no one's gonna
No,
do that this
no
year because they're gonna be
disrespect from
bad.
our listeners from Oklahoma City, but
No. I mean, of course not. Like, you don't play in an NBA market.
no, it's they don't have the draw, which is like
But they've had
Brooklyn is attempting
superstars.
to do that and be like that, what the Knicks thought they had type of draw, where it's like we can have a good executive, we could still draft well, but at the same time, it'd be nice if superstars after their rookie deals would like to come to our team. It's just a
Right.
huge asset to have when you're already a bargaining chip because of who you are in negotiations. It's just a huge leg up. That's why the Lakers have always gotten the premier free agents. And I mean, on ESPN, if you watch, it's always the same favorites. Whenever someone is up and whenever someone hits the free market, it's basically the same favorites that they're going to pick through. It's like, oh, are they going to make this work in the salary cap? If a certain player wants to go there, they're going to find a way to make it work.
Yeah.
But I think you're pretty spot on with what you think the Thunder is going to do, how they're going to finish. I mean, this is just a straight up. I don't know if they're winning many games. I think that with picks, and they can be a fun team to watch in a few years. But yeah,
I think they
they're
might
at
even be a
trust
fun
and
team to
trust the
watch this year.
process.
I think they're probably going to play fast, reckless basketball, and they're going to be. I mean, they're not going to play smart basketball, but they're probably going to play fun basketball.
They'll
But
get
when
some
the
wins
fourth
when some
quarter
teams are,
yeah, when the fourth quarter comes around, the team knows what's happening. Their coach is going to bench their difference makers. He's going to bench guys like SGA, and he's going to make up whatever excuse he has to do that if they're ahead because they want to lose these games. And that's, it's not my favorite thing in the world, but it's also not something that we don't expect at this point. The path to NBA success is be in a great market or hit on a few lottery picks. And they're
yeah.
not in a great market, so they got to do the other thing.
Which with Presti,
Yeah,
I think there's a good chance they do
they're
that.
they're a great development team. They're a great drafting team. So it's not even just the drafting. It's also the development. They have shown that they are fantastic for young guys, and part of it might be because they're separate from a lot of the distractions that you're going to encounter in a New York or a Miami or a
Yeah.
Los Angeles. Basically, the only thing you do out there is get better at basketball, and they've
Not a
shown
lot
it
of
with a
Magic
lot of
cities
guys.
in OKC.
Yeah, at least not to my knowledge. I don't know. Um, yeah, they're gonna be bad, and that's okay. Uh, but they're gonna be awful. So if you could still bet on the win totals, I would honestly say probably take the under. They've got them at 23.5. I don't think they're hitting that.
It's like how certain teams like the Nets at the end of last year, it's like you bet the Nets, you're going to win if you bet them every game. I think if you do the opposite, who's
Yeah.
playing against the Thunder every game, you'll probably make a lot of money.
Yeah, if you can find straight picks where you don't have to bet the line or anything like that, because the line is going to be like it'll be like whatever team is playing them, by 14 points. If you can find a straight pick that's not like awful odds, bet their opponents because they're gonna get jacked up this year. They've beaten expectations before. I don't think this is the year. All right, let's
But
jump back over to the Central Division.
yeah, I'm ready to talk. So I have this team in fourth, but I'm pretty bullish on them doing well. And that is the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Right,
So
right.
Cavs head coach this year, same as last year, JB Bickerstaff, which I think Bickerstaff is a great name for just a person in a office, adult type person. Bickerstaff.
He sounds like he's like the owner of a 1910s cruise line. like JB Bickerstaff and company, and like, maybe he owns some slaves, but no one really knows. I don't want to say that about JB Bickerstaff, like actual one. I'm just saying his name. I'm not saying that about the Bickerstaff family. I'm just saying
JB
maybe at
Bickerstaff.
some point in history, look into it. Look into it.
I gotta say it with a southern accent, then maybe. So
I
their
guess.
projected starters they got this year: Darius Garland and Colin Sexton, that we had talked about being a fiery backcourt. And then I don't know how much he's gonna start really, but we got Lauri Markkanen, and then Evan Mobley and Jared Allen rounding it out, which we were kind of talking about the many 7-footers that the Cavs can play. This is part of their problem.
So many of them.
But like, dude, Evan Mobley, after watching last night, is going to be a baller. He looked very comfortable. He shot very efficiently. I think he was like 17-8. And let me look up his box score because he played really well and he looked really comfortable for an NBA player. Jared Allen was 11 for 11 last night. He takes very high percentage shots.
He does.
But he's a great defender. He's a dude that can switch. He plays really aggressive. Yeah, Jared Allen was 25 last night. Mobley was 17 last night. Mobley was 17, 9, and 6 assists. Yeah. So not only is he just a big man that can score, but he makes plays. He's a good distributor. He looked really comfortable out there. And then on the bench, who I want to talk about, which I was most excited to learn because I didn't realize he was on this team. Ricky Rubio is the point guard of the Cavs. And I feel like I'm doing my best. Ricky Rubio. If I had a Rubio jersey, I feel like I'm doing a pretty good Rubio costume right now. Because I was looking at the video, I was like, this dude's stealing my look.
You think Ricky Rubio, NBA player, multimillionaire, one of the best like teenage players of all time, is stealing your look?
Oh yeah, he was definitely Big Tino. So I'm gonna do that.
All right,
He's been watching the streams.
I heard about the Give and Go show. I want to look like that guy.
But I just think because of if you get to practice and play with this dude all the time, like I think that's really gonna help Garland and Sexton become better players. And then also Rubio is just a fun guy to throw out on the bench squad and like a guy to put in lineups where he's going to create offense. Defense is obviously going to lack to a degree, but it's going to be a fun offensive team to watch. The rest of their roster is Cedi Osman. I'm kind of down on Cedi, LeBron's boy.
I think he didn't develop the way they were hoping for. I think LeBron. No. But we kind of know this. LeBron is not always the greatest talent evaluator. He lets his personal feelings get in the way sometimes. We've seen it with college guys that he's into. Yeah. Like it happens. It's fine. He was right about Caruso though. Caruso did everything right.
He looks good in a Bulls uniform too, which we'll talk about later. I do like Caruso in the red.
Yeah.
But so they get finishing out their bench. Isaac Okoro, great defender, and then Kevin Love, who. He's just like an old vet at this point now. You would hope that he would have done more. I think at any Cleveland fan out of their big three of LeBron, Kyrie, and Kevin Love, you would have hoped that he would have been the first one to go. And he's the one that's still with the team. But, they're just at the point now where they have so many other players that can outperform him and are better than Kevin Love, where I don't think he's going to be as much of a distraction to the franchise. They have who I think of their impact players this year, definitely Evan Mobley, if he continues to play at the trajectory he is. Jared Allen, I've always loved. Colin Sexton and Garland, I feel like their backcourt, they're going to have great games together and games. It's just going to be high and low because they're younger players. They are developing. I think they're just going to have their off nights, but they bring a certain energy to this team that I really like. If you would have said that this team, and I'm really bullish on the Grizzlies, I think the Grizzlies are a very good team. And the Cavs made them work to get that win. And if it wasn't for Ja Morant being amazing and Steven Adams fitting into that team well the way I thought it would, Cavs could have had a win, which I can't remember the last time they got a win on opening day. It must have been a long time.
I feel like they didn't do it very often during the LeBron years. That might be me remembering just that first season where he was like, this is the biggest game you're ever going to play, when it was them against the Knicks when he returned to Cleveland, and then they lost that game. So they may have gone 3-1 during his return. I don't know. But I will always think of LeBron teams as losing games early in the season, much like the Lakers did the other night.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we could talk about the Lakers,
Sure.
but
Oh, we will.
they'll be fine. They'll be
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. So
Uh,
so Vegas has them at I think 27.5
I was
wins.
gonna say they're 27 and a half. Last year they were 22 and 50. I have them at 34 and 48. I got them way over. I have them 7 games over right now, and I really am a believer in this team because just watching their game, Evan Mobley, and I think that their size is going to be a problem for some teams. This is a team that I could see winning a lot of those 50-50 matchups. Um, I just I like what they bring. They're a really entertaining team for me to watch. It's unique in this NBA where a lot of people are going small ball, but they got bigs that are not afraid to pull the trigger. They were still shooting a lot of 3-point shots last night, like every other team in the NBA. I think they could be a matchup problem for a lot of teams, which gives them their win total of what they have now, or what I think it's going to be, which is at 34 and 48, even after dropping that loss last night. Um, but I just think I think it's going to be an entertaining season. I think Cleveland fans are going to be happy with the product they put on the floor, watching the YouTube highlights. I think there's going to be, I don't know how many primetime games they have, but when they're on primetime, I think they're going to give people a show and people are going to talk about the Cavs a little more.
So I'll push back on the over under.
I know how you
just
how
like I
we
did with
started
the
the
Pistons.
show.
Let me just make a quick little point. I think Vegas has a very good read on the Cavs. Vegas last year had their over under at 22.5. How many wins did they finish with last year, Matt?
I'm going to say 22.
They finished with
21.
22 wins last year. They finished literally right where Vegas said they would be. I think that they've definitely, I mean, like, they've improved. Sexton's improved. Garland's improved. Mobley's a huge pickup. Jared Allen is probably got a few more years where he's going to continue to get better. Mobile, big, that can do a lot of things. I really don't like the Laurie fit on that team. I think
terrible.
I've talked about him potentially in previous weeks or at least off pod.
Chicago had to
I've
get
talked
rid of
about
him.
I've talked about him on Chicago and how his rookie year in the league I really had pretty high expectations for what he was going to become, and he has completely failed to meet those expectations. And I would say he's regressed. I think he's getting worse at basketball, and I don't know if that was the fit in Chicago. So maybe it'll change. But his offensive game has gotten worse. He is one of the least impactful defenders in the league. I think
It's funny that him and Kevin Love are on the same team.
Yes. And he is basically a small Kevin. And he's not like Minnesota Kevin Love. That dude could fucking ball. But
he's a thick
skinny,
boy.
hot Kevin Love, yeah, Laurie's like a smaller, skinny, hot Kevin Love. So that's a really long name for somebody. But that's how I think of him. I do have some questions about how many minutes Kevin Love is probably going to demand this season because he may want to play. We don't know. He might not be content, with being a bench piece. He may want to be a starter, and the way that he's paid is starter money. So the owner may push for them to play him. Ricky Rubio, best years are behind him. I think he makes a lot more sense for a contender to be a bench guard. He's going to help out their starting guards. He's going to probably teach them a lot of tricks of the trade. I kind of have him in the same realm that I have like a Goran Dragic at this point, where they're such intelligent guards that even though their athleticism is pretty much entirely shot at this point, they can teach. So he might be really good for them, 2 years down the line when they're able to kind of develop in as distributors because of having him on the team. But I look at this lineup and I just don't see major difference makers at this point in their career. I mean, I want Sexton and Garland to be good, and they are good when taken in a vacuum, but they're not good in a way that really contributes to wins yet. And I don't know if continuing to put young guys on a team with them is going to be the thing that gets them over that hump. I think you need in a fictional reality where like Jimmy Butler is on this team, I think you probably add 15 to 20 wins to this team on Jimmy Butler alone because of what he provides both as a player and as a vet presence. But the way that they're built right now, if Kevin Love and Ricky Rubio are your number one vet presences, I just don't see it because the
Love's like just
ability's not there anymore. And
I could hit you up with a GQ shoot, but that's about it.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, and more power to him if that happens. More power to him. Make your money however you can make it. I'd love to be featured in GQ. If the Give and Go show takes off, I'll lie about my age so that I can be part of a 30 under 30. uh, which is always sad thing about me that you guys are going to learn.
Hey, you got
on the
longer
show
than
right
I
now.
do.
You guys are going to learn right now. GQ has always wanted to be part of any 30 under 30. And what is it? It's October. I've got 7 months.
Hey,
So unless they include 30-year-olds for 30 under 30, in which case I've got a year and 7 months.
next List Night podcast. I'm gonna go ahead and plug a List Night podcast
Hey.
to do a top 5 30 under 30.
So we actually have it on our spreadsheet of spreadsheets. I think we have 30 under 30. 30 under 30s that we want to make, but also 30 under 30. You can just do random things that are under 30. I don't know. The number 29 is a great thing under 30. Neither here nor there. Thank you for plugging the List Night podcast. If you're watching the stream or watching us on YouTube right now, List Night podcast on YouTube, episodes weekly. It's another show that I do. Matt Ferentinos is a sometimes guest star. He's also one of the originators, so got to give him his dap for that. Yeah, I don't see it with the Cavs. I don't know what their pick situation is. So it might be a good thing that they're not going to win this year. But I think once they get out from under the Kevin Love money and they move on from guys like Laurie, they're probably going to be in a better position to pick up vet pieces that are going to help their existing cornerstones, Sexton, Garland, Mobley, Allen, thrive.
And I mean, they've shown, to be honest, that they can make good picks, but I think the LeBron effect helped them dramatically. I mean, they picked Kyrie number 1, and he still was Mr. Fourth Quarter, Mr. OT before they came there. I mean, he had some ridiculous streak where like he didn't miss a free throw for his first like 60 attempts or something, and he had games where he went off. So, and I mean, with Evan Mobley, I really like the Colin Sexton pick. I mean, who knows about their other signings if they're really good on that front, but I think drafting they could do pretty well. So maybe another, high pick does help their team, but I'm going to be watching them this year. I think they still have enough players to be exciting, but yeah, I mean, I don't have the Cavs really. I mean, I have them as high as I can. Realistically, their ceiling is 34 and 48. I think the East is going to be better that year, and I don't see them making the playoffs or the play-in. So,
yeah, well, maybe next year. Probably not. Maybe I think the Cavs are 2 years away from being 2 years away, and that's not from a title. That's from like a
they're not even spooky yet.
They're not spooky. But funny you mentioned that. Time to talk about the OG spooky team, number 4 in the Northwest Division, Minnesota Timberwolves. I don't know if Jared's still in the chat, but if
ultimate spooky
team. I want to say the guys
every year
that the spooky meme originally was about. It was about Cat and Levine and Wiggins. I think it was about those 3. Those were the Wolves that were going to be spooky. Wiggins is a warrior. Levine is living his best life as a Chicago Bull. That dude has
literally the
so many
centerpiece
steps.
of that team.
And Cat has had a really tragic year and a half, but is still one of the best big men in basketball. So
yeah. And their team actually does look really spooky this year. I mean, I hate the meme, but like, yeah,
they do. I don't exactly. I don't want to meme.
I'll let you continue. Yeah.
I have high hopes for the Wolves this year. This year, Vegas has them at 35.5 wins. I'm taking the over on that. I'm not taking it over by a ton, but I'm going to say they're going to win 38 games. I think they're a little bit better than Vegas has them. I mean, I completely blanked for a second. I'm sorry. Karl Anthony Towns is one of the best big men in basketball. Is his defense where it needs to be to play his position? Not really. But you can kind of cover him up with good guard defense, which you're going to get from guys like Anthony Edwards and Josh Okogie. Malik Beasley is one of the best young guys in the league. D'Angelo Russell never really took the jump that we thought he was going to take, but he's still a super talented scoring guard. So
I love D'Lo. He's always been solid.
And he and Kat have chemistry together. They're best friends. I understand why they want to play together. I don't know if he's the greatest fit in the world for this specific team, but he's had a couple really good years, and I could see him returning to that level of play as long as he stays healthy. I don't think that they're going to beat a ton of contenders this year. But I do think they're going to beat up on a lot of teams that are equal to them and under them, just on absolute talent that's going to be on the court. I mean, I think any Wolves fan and any NBA fan will tell you this. Anthony Edwards is one of the hottest tickets in basketball right now. He is so much fun to watch.
Telling the
guy
Rockets
is
to call a
all over the
timeout.
court. Yeah, the guy's a beast. One of the big pickups they had this offseason, a guy that I don't personally like, but he does contribute to winning basketball. Pat Bev is going to be probably
next 5 years
good.
are his.
The next
So
5
this
years
is like
are his.
four. This is 4 or 5,
left.
right, or something.
There's
2 years left.
Yeah. So maybe he'll win next year with the Wolves. Who's to say? Great. He's a good defensive guard, and he can distribute. He can score a little bit. He's got really active hands. He gets in opponents' heads a lot, which is super big if you're going to be down a lot and need to battle back to kind of like jaw with them and potentially get them teed up. Jake Layman, I think, is still on this team. Guy can stroke.
He is. Garbage
guy can
time
jump
Jordan.
out of the gym. Can't really do much else. Another guy who could probably be in GQ if he really wanted to. Every University of Maryland girl's, biggest crush. Unfortunately, not as good of a player as Kevin Huerter, but
I was watching the highlights and I was like, "Is that Jake Layman?" And I looked it up and I was like, "It is Jake Layman."
You know how I learned that Jake Layman was on the Timberwolves roster? I think it was a year or two ago when he got traded to them. They had a hype video on Twitter that was them playing like beach volleyball. Like it was like a Top Gun homage. And I saw a fucking shirtless Jake Layman, and I was like, I know that body anywhere. That's Jake Layman. And then I had to like really examine some things about myself. But neither here nor there. Let's not dive into that right now. That's not what this pod is about. He's not a bad player. He's a good role player. And he's still young, and he's still at a point where he could develop. He's a very efficient shooter. I imagine that will continue. I don't know how much burn he's really going to get on this roster because he does a lot of things that other guys do better. But he's there if you want to slot him into certain shooting lineups. I think, they've got a lot of offense. They are definitely going to struggle defensively, and that was the case last year, and that's been the case for a lot of years. Offensively, they kind of have the golden ticket. They've got guys that can put points on the board. Defensively, most of them are turnstiles. So hopefully Anthony Edwards, Beasley, and Okogie are a big kind of change on that. But we'll kind of see. And I don't really have huge faith in their current coach. But he's better than Ryan Saunders. So it's an improvement.
I mean, so last night, Cat had 30, Edwards had 29, and Russell had 22. So, like,
they have a big three.
They do have a big three. If any of them drops, this could be like a 15-win team. But with all of them out there, I think that they're a team that can compete. And I think that they could play up to their opponents. I could see them having nights where they compete with a Warriors or a Nets or a Lakers. Like, they can do that. They could definitely go up with other teams. Bucks and Giannis, I think they're going to destroy them. But, like, Anthony
they don't
Edwards
really have anybody
really
that can stop a guy like Giannis.
I don't think anyone in the league
doesn't really go
downhill
like very much anymore. Exactly. Like, who you've got to kind of beat Giannis by.
As much as I hate to say it, again, there's no one in the league that can stop him.
You've got to beat Giannis by committee. You've got to put multiple guys on him at all times, and you got to force him into bad positions where he's still going to score a lot, but he may do it somewhat inefficiently. And the Wolves, I mean, it doesn't really matter because the Wolves aren't going to be going to the finals, so they're not going to play him in the playoffs. But they just don't have anyone that is built to stop a guy who can just go downhill with a full head of steam and crush you. That was a big part of why a few years ago, and I mean at this point, it was, 5 years ago, why they acquired Jimmy Butler was because he was a guy that could do stuff like that, and he made their team significantly better, and he was their first playoff berth since the Kevin Garnett years. But they don't have a guy like that anymore, and hopefully they don't make the mistake they made last time where they traded off their potentially brightest young talent for him, the guy they thought was not the best young talent in Zach LaVine, but the one who's arguably become the best player out of all three. So I hope they don't do it again.
Was Jimmy Butler on the Wolves when he took like the practice squad guys and beat the starters? Yeah, that was one of my favorite.
When he shouted, "You need me, you fucking need me." Yeah.
Those RNBA stories are great. because he went to the Sixers and then the Heat, so like he bounced around a lot. But I just remember reading that like Jimmy Butler takes the bottom of the half, like bottom scrub players, picks them up and beats the starters in practice. Like
he got traded
such
to
a great Jimmy Butler story.
He got traded to the Sixers for I'm gonna blank on his name, Covington and a couple other guys, if I remember correctly, because it wasn't working out with the Wolves. Obviously, we all know that whole story. And then the Sixers had to choose between, the way it was reported was that they had to choose between Ben Simmons and Jimmy Butler, and Ben Simmons was the homegrown talent. They thought that was going to get them there, and they had already paid Tobias Harris and they'd already paid Joel Embiid, so they chose Simmons over Butler because Butler wanted a max and they couldn't afford to pay his max. So now Jimmy Butler's on the Heat, who I think I mentioned previously are my dark horse to go to the finals. And, you know, he's living his best life in Miami on a team that plays hard every single night. So, you know, did it work out really well for the Wolves? They only made one playoff berth. Did it work out really well for the Sixers? They're imploding. Seems like it's working out for the Heat. So,
yeah.
Worse things have happened. Jimmy Butler has now made it to 4 teams in the league, which I thought he was going to be a lifelong Bull. So I'd never expected that to be the case.
And just the fact that he's an important piece on every team he's on. I mean, similar to a Chris Paul, where like that dude you thought could be a lifer, but every team he's been to has been an impact and has just been an impact player. And I think Jimmy Butler brings that more than his on the court presence, which both of those players have a great on the court presence, but it's just something about the mindset of those teams, getting the, you know, role players, young guys to buy in. It's just a huge, really something you can't like tangibly factor in, but just something that those players bring to those guys. But Chris Paul, he probably can because he's a point guard and the way he distributes, you know, he gets guys better shots. But
his very style makes guys better, whereas Jimmy Butler, he covers for other guys' weaknesses and he puts them in positions to succeed, but he's not necessarily going to be the primary ball handler all the time who is setting them up for shots.
So anything else on the Wolves you got?
No. They're gonna be fine. I think they're gonna, you know, offensively they're gonna be a powerhouse. Defensively, there's work to be done. Coaching wise, there's work to be done. The roster fit right now, I think there's still moves to be made. I don't know if they're gonna happen during this season or if they're gonna wait for next year. But obviously, I think you build around Cat and Edwards, and you kind of make everybody else fit with them as much as you can. 38 wins. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I think that's about right. And that's on, I mean,
and that's a good season for the Wolves.
Realistically, maybe like 35, but
yeah,
34, 35, but 38 would be good, especially in the West.
If they win 38, that is and I hate to say it, that's a great season for the Wolves. They very rarely win 500 games. Obviously, that's not 500, but it's fairly close. Usually, they're in the low 30s, upper 20s.
Speaking of 500,
that's
what I got as our next team.
Oh yeah, let's go.
So this was tough for me. I really was trying to pick who I wanted to do. I went with the Pacers as finishing third in this division. Head coach Rick Carlisle. Starters, they got Malcolm Brogdon, which even when he was on the Bucks, I thought when they let him walk, that was a mistake because he was always the guy that made big buckets. Karis Levert, who was one of, as happy as I was to see the Nets and like James Harden and Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving come to the Nets, I was heartbroken when Karis left. Yeah. He was one of those guys that from Michigan came as a shooting guard.
You big Michigan guy?
To make, I mean, you know, go Michigan.
Yeah. All right. Who knew?
He was one of those guys that just really developed and was coming into his own on the Nets in the bubble. He went down there with the team. They weren't in the playoffs, but they were one of those like fringe teams that got to compete, and he balled out and played really, really well down the stretch for the Nets to even get into the bubble and be one of those teams. So I think when he comes back healthy, going to be a huge impact player. TJ Warren, Domantas Sabonis, who is their all-star. That dude balled out yesterday. I think he had like 37 points. Maybe missed 1 3-point attempt. I was watching the Pacers Hornets game, and like Sabonis was just on fire. Whenever he got the ball and needed to take an important three, they're like, we need a bucket now. That dude was clutch And I love the left hand. The left
Yeah,
hand is great.
he is one of the best stat stuffers, much like a young Kevin Love in the
Fantasy
league.
wise.
Yeah, while also being just a turnstile on defense.
Yeah.
His and I mean I'll let you continue. Obviously, Sabonis is a guy who is just defensive instincts away from being an All NBA player. If he had his dad's defensive ability, he'd be the greatest player of all time. And I have a hot take that his dad is probably a top 10 player all time. And we never really got to see it because by the time he came over from the USSR, his body was shot to shit.
Destroyed.
And he was still
Yeah.
an all-star level player. But that's a take for another time when we talk about what ifs in
We'll
NBA
do a
history.
Russian podcast, yeah.
We'll do a what ifs pod at some point. And we'll talk about
great
guys
show,
like
too.
Sabonis the senior. But yeah, continue. Miles Turner, I think, also on that.
No, yeah.
roster.
So yeah, Miles Turner is the center who, again, is just like a solid 5. He's been improving every season. I think he's going to improve again. And then they got TJ McConnell, which is kind of like a Caruso type player. He's just a very scrappy guy, really good point guard, a guy that you want leading your second unit when he's out there. Jeremy Lamb, Justin Holiday, Brad Wanamaker, Torrey Craig. But the guy I really want to talk about, who was their first round pick this year, Chris Duarte. That dude is a baller. And I did not know anything about this guy until watching the game last night. And even a lot of Mavs fans were talking about Rick Carlisle even playing him. So like, oh, Rick Carlisle doesn't really play rookies and blah, blah, blah. But dude, he had an amazing game. He was like lights out from 3. I want to pull up his full.
I mean, Rick Carlisle played Luka Doncic, so
I was gonna say
he'll play some rookies.
With the people talking about that, whatchamacallit, that hot take, they're like, yeah, well, didn't they have like the greatest rookie of all time, Luka Doncic? Like,
they arguably did.
What are you supposed to do? So he had 27 and 5 rebounds with 6 threes. He had 11 after the first quarter. I mean, this guy is an impact player. I think there's a nickname for him where he's like East Coast Clay or something. Like, he's just one of those guys that I think I didn't foresee being an impact player for the Pacers. And because like Levert wasn't playing and certain guys like weren't playing yet, like in that game last night, he just stepped up and played a lot of good minutes. And I think he can be a really good player and make this team really interesting, which is already, and the Pacers have always been that middle of the pack team. They never have the most money that they can spend. They're not as big of a market. They're that example of like a small market team that can have consistent success.
Yeah, they expect consistency
throughout their career, and they do. They're like Spurs, like when it comes to their playoff appearances and how long they've been a relevant team. Last year they finished 34 and 38, a little bit of a down year. Vegas has them at 42.5. I have them at 41 and 41. I think perfect 500, which is good enough to crack the East in my opinion, or at least make the play in. And they're just going to be a really interesting team. I think they're just so well-rounded. You're going to have nights from Sabonis. You're going to have nights where Levert makes big buckets. And then I think Duarte is going to be a guy that's going to, be up there for rookie of the year. You didn't really see it, but just got a guy that goes off on nights because he's a hot shooter. I mean, you saw with Harrison Barnes, with Evan Fournier, with guys last night where if they're just open and they're hitting their shot, they could go nuclear on certain nights. And I think he has that potential. Another OG old franchise founded in 1946. Pacers have no NBA championships, which I discovered, but they got 3 ABA championships in 69, 71, and 72.
Yeah, they were really good prior to the merger. And I mean they've been really good since.
Yeah. Any guys are I was gonna say, like, what besides Sabonis's defensive flaws, any guys you like on this team that you think could be an impact?
I like a lot of their team. I like TJ McConnell a lot. I think TJ McConnell, obviously he's a little overrated in certain circles because he's like one of those scrappy white point guards that does a little bit of everything and he's always throwing himself on the court. Yeah, he's a skinnier Caruso who can't jump out of the gym. A little bit better distributor, though, so I will give him credit for that. Malcolm Brogdon, one of the best guard defenders in the league right now. Also one of the most efficient players. Super talented guy. Karis Levert, don't have a bad word to say about the guy. His health, unfortunately, does worry me. He's had a lot of serious injuries in the past few years. Um, Karis
Well, that was
Levert
one of
was,
the about that trade. That was one of the like
yeah,
blessings in disguise was that they had to do a physical because of that trade. And that's what they
yeah.
found. I think it was like a lump on his
It was
lung or something, right?
yeah, he had a tumor, I believe.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, thank God they caught it. Um, he's a guy that my fantasy team, we actually took him, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago before he had really taken off, and he was
Mm,
like one of the big like dark horse pickups of the season. Nobody knew who he was, and prior to his injury that year, he was a monster. He was one of the
so
most
good.
impactful guys on our team. I love watching
That's
him
why, like
play.
at the deadline, I was just like, ugh.
Yeah, he's
I
got
saw
such a
the names in
smooth
there, and
game.
like Levert, Allen, just names that I was like, why couldn't they give away Joe Harris?
Yeah, T.J. Warren, a guy that can get buckets.
Yeah.
He's been a little overhyped as a bucket getter at different times. He's had times where he seems like he's ready to take the next step, and then he kind of regresses a little bit. But he's a great scorer. Obviously, I said what I said about Sabonis, and I hope that he takes the next step as a defender. Miles Turner uh, helps cover for the mistakes that Sabonis makes because he's a super impactful defender, and I
Mm,
think I don't know if he's necessarily going to be on this team forever. I could see him getting traded or leaving in free agency at some point to go to a contender. But I think
yeah.
Miles Turner at some point is going to be part of a championship roster. Um, and then their bench like T.J. McConnell, Jeremy Lamb, Justin Holiday, Wanamaker. They've got talented players on their bench. I don't feel super strongly about this team because you can look at the roster and say, here's all the things they're good at. Here's the few things that they're bad at. But the stuff that they're good at, they're just not good enough at where
Yeah.
they're gonna be an actual genuine contender. I
They're
think
good,
you
but they're
said
not elite at anything.
exactly. And the guys that are elite at something, Sabonis is elite at his position, but it costs them so much
The detriment. Yeah.
because he's such a detriment defensively at one of the most important positions that you can't be bad defensively at, much like
Mm.
Karl Anthony Towns. Uh, I think you said you have them at 41 and 41, finishing 500. Last year, it looks like they finished 34 and 38, which I want to say was the first year in like 30 years that they finished below 500.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a bubble season. It was 10 games shorter. It's a little bit weird. Not sure we should necessarily count it for that record. Vegas has them at 42 and a half. I'm going to I think I'm going to take your record. I think they're going to finish 500. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people have them. I mean, I'll say a lot of people have them as a bottom tier playoff team. I think they might be a play in team. I think the Wizards have a better record than them this season.
Mm.
A team that is not supposed to be better than them. I will say the
I,
Wizards
I
are
after
going to have a
watching the
better record.
Wizards, and I mean, I think part of it was, I mean, Siakam still has to come back for the Raptors,
Of
but they
course,
looked
that's a huge
terrible.
loss to not have arguably your best player out there.
They had no offense. Dude, Dragic or Gordon Dragic is like their best offensive player, and then he can't sustain playing a full game.
Yeah, I mean
Fred Van
FVV
Fleet
started
had
off
enough.
really well and then fell apart.
I say he had a terrible shooting night at the end of the day. And then Scotty Barnes just is not at that level yet where he can take over an offense. But I mean, the Wizards made that. It was blowout time midway through the third quarter. They looked
And
really
then
good.
they wizarded it. And in the fourth quarter, they deferred to Bradley Beal iso ball and
Yeah.
turnovers and not getting back on defense. And it became a 10-point game. It was at one point like a 26-point lead. And then, I
Yeah.
mean, like obviously they picked it up towards the end. They hit some big shots with like 4 minutes to go. They kept the Raptors at bay. But you got to clean that shit up. Like that,
Yeah.
you can't give 35 minutes of defensive effort.
I
You
mean,
got
it
to give a
happens a
whole game.
lot, and that's just the nature of the league, I think, where
It's
if
it's
you
a
take
game of
your foot off
runs.
the gas, if you take your foot off the gas pedal, like points can happen so fast in the NBA. A
Yeah,
three, quick turnover three, that's already 6 points off of whatever the deficit is.
with the amount of fouls called and with the reality of how many
Which we
guys are
could,
shooting threes at this point. Although, yeah, like I think you're about to say, the foul calling has been pretty great so far.
yeah, I've actually really liked that they've kept it consistent to where they're not calling a lot of fouls. There are a lot of plays where in my head I'm just like, that's a foul. And the fact that they haven't been calling it, and consistently have been that way, I think is better for the league, better for the pace of play. I'm interested to see how the Nets adjust.
I do want to give a quick shout out. Odds Jam, thanks for hanging out in the chat. Appreciate you being here. Looking forward to seeing what type of NBA content or sports content you've got coming up. I know you're planning on doing some streams soon, so we will definitely be checking that out. If you are watching in chat right now and you see Odds Jam _betting in chat, make sure you go to their profile, hit them a quick follow. And if you're here and you're watching us and you have not hit the follow button, hit the follow button right now so you're always alerted whenever we go live with another episode. And if you're watching us on YouTube and you're watching the recorded version of this, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. If you've got any comments of anything we've talked about so far, or you have anything that you want us to talk about on a future week, leave it below in a comment. We are happy to take any user comments and potentially work them into the show. And we 100% appreciate any support you guys show us, whether it's likes, subscribes, even if you dislike it. If you don't like an episode, hit the dislike button. At least we know we got to get better at something. And then tell us why in a comment.
I'm a man that loves constructive criticism, so
yeah, we need constructive criticism. You know, this is a new thing for both of us. Obviously, you know, with the pandemic, people started getting more into like content creation. I did some streaming, got a podcast, and now I have a basketball show that Matt and I are working on. We got plates in the air.
Yeah, my failed OnlyFans account led me to this.
It's only failed for the time being. You know, if the show pops off, then OnlyFans back on deck, and then you could be maybe for the 30 under 30 of male OnlyFans performers.
Double dip in there. That wouldn't be a bad thing.
Yeah. love for you to get paid on OnlyFans. I'd subscribe. I wouldn't look at your content. I'd look at his content, but I would definitely subscribe. Let's take a quick ad break, and we will be back in a minute. All right, we are back, and this time I've got a dog with me.
Hey.
If you are watching, and you can see Vino.
Vino.
He is he's not loving the attention I'm not paying to him right now. So he's probably oh, there he goes. He left. Back to go sleep on the bed. Giraffe choreographer in chat says, back when Matt had his long hair, he was killing it on OnlyFans. Ever since he cut his hair, he's no good.
I got another few months to go.
Your hair is coming back, so you know, could
I've already committed to myself growing back the hair.
Hell yeah,
I saw a post
love to hear
where it's like, you know, someone cuts their beard every year. I'll be that guy that grows his hair once and just cuts it once a year. You know,
I'm with it. He also said the ad that we just ran told him to try the new brisket at Chipotle, and he might do it. That's ads working right there. Twitch, Chipotle. Clearly, you need to sponsor me. Beyond that, I agree with you. I saw one of those ads the other day. I saw it maybe a couple weeks ago, and I was like, "Damn, Julia, I might go to Chipotle for the first time in like 4 years."
Josh's hot take is LaMelo starting in the All-Star game this year.
That is a very hot. Well, I mean, fan vote matters.
Yeah.
So it could happen. It could happen. If he has
did have a heat check 3 to put him up at 31. I mean, he was part of the reason why the Hornets came back last night. But
yeah. No, I mean, I don't think it's. I think it's a little bit too deep at guard, especially in the East right now. There's a lot of really, really talented guys. But
the East and West, especially positionless basketball, it's just like.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that are going to be in the running. Although I could definitely see it. It's Moxie in chat. Yo, what's good, everybody? How's it going? Thank you for being here. Appreciate you. If this is your first time chatter, thanks for watching. Make sure you hit that follow button if you want to be notified when we go live with future episodes. We do this right now. We're doing this weekly. If we ever make money off this, we will do it more than weekly. But for the time being, we have NBA shows every week, and we talked about it a little bit earlier. We may be doing some stuff on weekends as well. Whether it's game nights or post-game discussion or anything like that. But regardless, appreciate you being here. Appreciate you chatting. And we're going to jump into, I think, whatever our next team is. I think we're going back to the Northwest Division.
Back to the Northwest.
Yeah, back to me. All right. Next up in the Northwest Division. And these next 3 teams, I've all got them being, you know, fairly good teams. And, you know, Moxie, thank you for the follow. Next up is probably one that a lot of people are going to expect. I've got the Blazers coming in third in this division. I've got them right there in the middle. Vegas has them at 44.5 wins. I think they're actually going to beat expectations this year. I think they're going to be I knew this was going to be a little bit of a hot take.
Actually.
I spent a lot of time just thinking about the Blazers. I think this is the last year for a while that they are going to be a good team, but I think they are going to be a good team this year. That said, I can see them blowing it up at the All-Star or at the trade deadline if things are not working. I could see Nurkic gone. I could see Dame gone. I could see CJ McCollum gone. There's a lot of potential for this team to get blown up at the deadline so they can get picks back. I hope it doesn't happen. I like watching them play, but I've got them at 47 wins. Terry Stotts has been a great coach. Neil Olshey has been up and down as an executive. You know, I think his bad moves are not really given enough attention. He made a lot of really bad moves during the 2016 free agency explosion. But they've got a really good starting lineup. They've got one of the best hot hands in the league in Dame Lillard. CJ McCollum, obviously super talented guard that can do a little bit of everything. He's kind of
I love CJ.
It's weird because
I love my undersized boys.
Yeah. I mean, like I like him and Dame do the same stuff, and he just doesn't do it as good as Dame. While I mean, like he's an inch taller, but like he's not effective on the defensive end at all, where it doesn't matter.
So we're like Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum. We haven't talked Celtics too much, but like last year, and what I saw myself watching the Celtics Knicks game is there's so much when one player has a really good night, the other player just does not have a great night.
Yeah.
And if Jason Tatum has a good night, I feel like they win. When Jalen Brown has a good night, they lose in OT. When CJ McCollum goes off and has his night, they're going to lose. But when Dame is hitting his shots, they're going to win. I just think it would be better suited for them to have a guard that can, you know, complete them as opposed to being a guy that does the same things as them, which is why, I mean, the Blazers are always one of those really good teams. They're always a team that I kind of doubt, but is still finding themselves in like the 4 or 5 seed in the West. So I could see them doing that again this year. And Dame is Dame. Like, I'm not going to doubt him, but I see them losing a lot of those 50-50 games this year. Yeah. I think there's so many game-changing players in the NBA this year.
I like that you made the comparison to Tatum and Brown, because I kind of feel the same way. And a lot of that is because of the players that Tatum and Brown are in comparison to Dame and to McCollum. If McCollum has a bad night and things are not working for him, Dame is still going to have a really high usage rate. And if he's having a good night, it's very likely they're going to win a game. But if CJ's having a great night and Dame's having a bad night, he's not going to stop shooting. Dame is going to shoot if he's having a bad night. And the same thing is true for the Celtics. If Jalen Brown is having a bad night and Tatum is having a great night, Jalen Brown's still going to do all the other little things that need to be done to win a game of basketball. He's going to be all over the court doing shit. And it's not to say that Tatum doesn't do that stuff. But if Tatum has a bad night, he will shoot you out of the building. He will go 3 for 22.
7 for 30.
Yeah, there you go. He subscribes so much to the notion of Kobe Bryant basketball, where if you stop shooting, it means you gave up. And there
I'd rather go
1
for 30 than 1 for 9. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because 1 for 9 means you gave up. And to an extent, if you are a superstar scorer, which Jason Tatum is, there is an element of truth to that, because your expectation is that you are going to score at a high clip every single night. And if it does not fall in the first 9 shots, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to fall in the next 20. But it does affect whether or not you win the game if it does not fall in those next 20. Jalen Brown does not delude himself into thinking that he is a superstar scorer. He's a good scorer. He's good at every single aspect of basketball. So if the scoring's not happening, he will do other stuff, and he'll get to the line, and he'll force deflections, and he'll grab rebounds, and he'll beat guys up down low and pass the ball out to somebody who's having a better night. Jason Tatum froze out Jalen Brown last night in double OT. And maybe it's because, you know, Jalen was a little bit gassed at that point, but I don't think it would have happened in the other direction. And this is a long point to relate them back to the Blazers.
I think
we're very much in the same position with the Blazers. I think CJ McCollum If Dame's having a great night, he feeds Dame. If CJ McCollum's having a great night and Dame's not having a great night, I think Dame tries to get back into it at the expense of the team. And Nurkic is also there somewhere in the middle where he gives up a lot on the defensive end, but he's super talented offensively.
He's a matchup problem
as
a
right
five.
fit for that roster, considering like how many other things they're already giving up defensively? Do they need a guy like Nurkic's offense, or would he be better suited to a team that has offensive issues? You know, I don't know. I think there's a trade to be made for this team that takes them over the edge, but I don't know if they're ever going to make it.
Just kind of thought Ayton to the Blazers.
Maybe.
I don't think it would be
if Ayton, you know, if the damage is done with the Suns, I think Ayton would be money on the Blazers, but I think Ayton would be money on 28 teams in the league. Like, yeah. I think he's a super underrated guy. I think he's going to prove that he's a max player this year and next year.
I saw there's like a unanimous GM who said the Suns owner is a very cheap guy and he's going to regret. It's like Ayton brought you to a finals. He deserves that money. And
Robert Sarver sells draft picks for cash. He doesn't trade them for future compensation picks. He doesn't he
cash
doesn't do it as much anymore.
Guy.
He sends them for cash. The most valuable asset in the NBA is high draft picks, and he sells them for cash. It's all you need to know about Robert Sarver in terms of how much he's trying to win. Yeah, I think Ayton would be great on this team. I don't know necessarily if Nurkic would be good for what Phoenix is trying to do, because I think he would take touches away from Booker and from Bridges. But I could see it working with a guy like CP3. You know, obviously it's pretty much a fact at this point, unless another crazy trade happens, that CP3's future is going to be with the Suns. So he may be able to get the best out of a guy like Nurkic.
I think Nurkic, where, like you said, he would take away from Booker and Paul. I think because like the Blazers don't need another playmaking guy. They need someone that can help them on the other end. They have the scoring already. And Nurkic can do a lot for him. And when he wasn't there a few postseasons ago, you felt it. You know, he's on the sideline. He wanted to be there. When he's on the floor, he's a huge impact player. But, I mean, it's great when Dame hits a buzzer beater and they win the first round of the playoffs, but then they're gonna keep getting swept second round.
Yeah, I mean, since they made the Western Conference Finals, they really have not met expectations. I actually have Nurkic down as one of my impact players, but I have him down as an impact player because I think it will make the team better if he gets traded. I think and it's not a knock on Nurkic. It's just the way that the roster is built.
Yeah.
I think the best thing that could happen for them is for him to get traded and for them to get a defensive big who can catch lobs, and I think that takes them to the next level. I've also got Nance down as Larry Nance Jr. as one of their impact players.
Oh, yeah.
He's a guy that can defend kind of 3 through 5. He can jump out of the gym. He is a guy that can catch lobs. He's not a great offensive player, but he can kind of unlock your point guards a little bit if he's playing with the right bench units. And then Robert Covington. He hasn't really been the player that he was when he was on the Sixers, where he was, you know, one of the most impactful guard defenders. He was a guy that could defend 1 through 4 while being
and
a
his
fairly
shot was
strong,
always money.
big guy.
He had a great 3-point shot.
He had a great 3-point shot. He's kind of lost that a little bit. He's more prone to shoot guys out of games now. But if he can rediscover his shot, I think he's going to be a big impact on the team. You know, as we talk through it, I feel like 47 wins might be me dreaming big, but I think they've still got one more run in them where they're a mid-tier playoff team, and I think it's this year. And if they lose Nurkic and they replace him with somebody else, or potentially they lose CJ McCollum and they replace him with somebody else, maybe they're a 50-win team. It's just, you know, what's the fit? You got to get the right player for that roster, and they have not done it so far.
And I felt the same way about them the past 3 years, and they've beaten my expectations. So again, I could see them doing that again this year.
Yeah, let's move back to the Central Division, and for these last two, I think we can probably go through them a little bit quicker because I think a lot of people have probably heard about both of these teams a lot, and it'll be the same case for the Northwest. Obviously, the top teams are going to get the most shine, but let's jump into it.
Yeah, with the Bucks, there's one good dude I want to talk about, but before I get there, got to talk about the Bulls. It was the team I was talking about with the toss-up with the Pacers, where the Pacers, I feel like, have always had the organizational success. Recently, the Bulls haven't had that. They've had spurts where they've been good and relevant. But even that, it was like a 4 or 5 seed was their real peak. Um, and I think what they're doing around Zach LaVine is great. They got Billy Donovan, which he has his faults, but I still think overall he's a solid coach that will do a good job with winning teams and player development. And they have Lonzo and DeMar and Vucevic as guys that they picked up to work. And Caruso, who's he's more of a bench player, but just a guy that can fill out that team and give you guys important minutes and just be that energy type player and that defensive player where I think they're lacking the most. But a guy that I kind of want to talk about, Patrick Williams, I think out of all the players on the Bulls, we know you're going to get scoring with Vucevic, beast on Orlando, great center. He could do everything. He can shoot. He can score inside. He's kind of slow, so he's not really a switch guy. You definitely have to
not
play
a great
one
defender.
Inside. But
great scorer, amazing scorer, not a great defender.
Same with DeRozan, because DeRozan is not the best defender, but he can go off and win you games by himself. Lonzo, on the other hand, is a good defender, is a guy that wants to run. And Lonzo and LaVine, because LaVine loves to run and he can dunk too, I think there's going to be a lot of highlights this year where you see Lonzo lobs to Zach LaVine. Kobe White, amazing hair again this year. He's a great player too. Caruso is going to be that guy that fills every needs that they have. And then they fill out with Troy Brown Jr., Derek Jones Jr., and Tony Bradley. New additions, Zoe DeRozan and Vucevic. Last year, 31 and 41. Vegas has them at 43.5, so they're pretty bullish on them. I have them at 42 and 40, which is under, but I still think they're above 500, still going to be in those playoffs. Founded in 1966, they had those championships in the Jordan years in the 90s. All throughout the 90s, they dominated. I'm just excited. I mean, everyone kind of knows about these players, so we don't have to dive in too much, but they got the win against the Pistons. Grant had a great game. I was more surprised that the Pistons were able to hang with them for as long as they did. LaVine had the performance you want to see out of an all-star, out of a premier franchise player last night. I think he dropped over 30 points and just had a great performance. Patrick Williams looked really, really good on defense, which is where I think he can be that impact player that is that game changer for the Bulls and that tone setter on defense. I think they're going to be a good team. I think they're going to be a solid team. I think they're going to have those nights where, I mean, they have the names. And so they're going to have nights where each of them go off and do really well. I'm still interested to see more games against more teams, how they match up. But I really like LaVine. LaVine's a stud. He's continued to grow and be a really, really good player. So I think just anyone around him that can help maximize his game is going to be fun to watch. And I think the Bulls did a good job of doing that this year.
Yeah, I do want to call out, it's Moxie in the chat that I didn't even know Patrick Williams was playing. I thought he was injured still, and I'm a Bulls fan. I think he was injured for part of the offseason and obviously part of last year. And they're saying now that he may have a shoulder injury from last night. Didn't have his greatest performance last night, but he's also a young guy. You know, there's a strong likelihood that he could shrug it off and they'll get him back out there. I don't know if they're going to do that or they're going to be a little bit more wary about his health going forward. But to a lot of the points that Matt made regarding the roster, it's a roster that, in my opinion, it might be the most interesting roster in the league this year because they've very clearly almost gone entirely all in on offense. You have some defenders in there, like Alonzo is a good guard defender. Alex Caruso is a good guard defender. Zach LaVine is a pretty insignificant defender. DeMar DeRozan is an awful defender. Vucci Main is an awful defender. Patrick Williams, he's young. He might take that jump into being a good defender, but he's not necessarily there yet. But Lonzo Ball is a great distributor. He's become a great three-point shooter. He's returned to basically who he was in college as a three-point shooter. Zach LaVine is one of the most talented offensive forces in basketball right now. Vucci Main is one of the most talented offensive big men in basketball right now. And DeMar DeRozan, while having a very archaic game in terms of how he works from the mid-range and where he works inside, has since 2016, 2017 or so become a really good distributor and a guy willing to do a lot of the little things to win games. You know, he's not a great 3-point shooter. He's not the most efficient scorer in the world, but he's a good scorer. And Alex Caruso, I don't have enough good things to say about Alex Caruso, and I realize like that's such a Lakers.
Baby.
Yeah, it's a Lakers fan mentality where you know we have these role players that come through the team and we treat them like they're superstars. But I genuinely believe Alex Caruso is the kind of guy, if he gets enough burn on this team, and I think he will, where he could be a 5x5 threat. He doesn't score at a high level. He doesn't rebound at a high level. He doesn't get assists at a high level. But he does defend at a super high level, and he does all that other stuff good enough. Looking at his stat line last night, he had 3 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 4 steals, 2 blocks on 2 turnovers and 5 fouls. And I guarantee I watched about half that game. Those were good fouls. Yeah. So Alex Caruso, we're calling it now 5x5 watch this season. I think he might be like the smallest player ever to get a 5x5. I'm not sure if that's true, but that's what I'm going to say now. And I think they've got a roster that can make noise, or a roster that's going to end up looking like shit because they might just not have the defense, which is kind of ironic considering Billy Donovan tends to be a fairly defensive-minded coach. So, you know, maybe they'll scheme for it. I don't know. I'm excited to watch them. They're one of the teams that I'm most excited to watch this season because I think that they're just going to be an adventure every single night. And I don't know if it's going to work, but I want to see what happens.
I can see them playing up and also playing down with a lot of teams.
Yeah, very much so. They definitely have a roster that, you know, you could see them being competitive with the Bucks one night and then losing to the Magic the next night. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with them. They could be, you know, they could win 48 games. They could win 30 games. I genuinely don't know. And if they win 30 games, I hope that they split up this roster because there's a lot of talent that would be really useful on other teams that it might not be the right fit in Chicago. But
yeah,
it's at the very least it's a fun roster. They're interesting.
Yeah, that's all I got for the Bulls. Watch Last Dance if you haven't watched it or need to watch it again. It's a great documentary.
All right, I'm with it. Next up for me then, my number 2 team, and this number 1 and number 2 in this division I think are going to give a lot of people pause because a lot of it's going to come down to the health between the two of them. I'm going to say number 2, it's going to be the Jazz. I can totally see why people would take the Nuggets in this position, considering they've got some key injuries going into the season with. But Jokic is incredible, and I don't want to root against him. I don't think I have it in me to root against him.
Surprised you're going against your boy Jordan Clarkson here, though.
I mean, I love Jordan Clarkson. He's a microwave off the bench. I won't say a bad word about Jordan Clarkson outside of, I think he's got a pretty bad throat tattoo. But outside of that, and I'm a guy that loves a throat tattoo.
Dang.
I'm a guy that wants a throat tattoo. I don't think Jordan Clarkson has a very good one. The Jazz, you know, they're consistently a good to great team, and there's really not a bad thing you can say about their roster. Joe Ingles getting kind of old. Rudy Gobert may have peaked, but those are not real bad things to say about them. Quinn Snyder, always a fantastic coach. Last year they finished first, 52-20, so they were on, I guess, a 62, 63 win pace. This year Vegas has them at 52.5. I'm taking a slight under. I'm going to say they're going to win 50 games. So they're still going to be a 50-win team, and they're going to be probably a top 4 playoff team. But like I had said on previous episodes, I think the West is going to be fairly equal around the top this year. I don't think we're going to see a 60-win team. I think we're going to see a bunch of guys in the 50s, and they're probably going to be
just with the kind of power vacuum that you've heard, just with Jamal Murray from the Nuggets, and then Kawhi being hurt, Lakers figuring it out. It's definitely, I kind of agree with you where a lot of the teams at the top of the West are going to be in that 50-win range.
Difference makers on the team this year. I mean, we don't even need to go through the entire roster because they have so many good guys that are good in so many different ways. Mike Conley, obviously, Royce O'Neal, Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, Joe Ingles, Jordan Clarkson, my fucking guy. I think they're difference makers this year. Bojan Bogdanovic, who I almost stuttered over his name, so I apologize for that. Even though, you know, he's one of the 2 Bogdanoviches in the league. And a little bit surprising difference maker, and this could totally not pan out, or he could be the difference maker in a bad way, Hassan Whiteside. I think if Hassan Whiteside finally gets his shit together, and this might be the roster where that's the case, where he knows he's 100% the number 2 center on this roster, the sky is the limit for him. And I don't know if he's ever going to rediscover the height that he had when he was in Miami, where he was a potential triple-double threat with blocks almost every night. But the athleticism's still there. The scoring ability is fine. The defensive ability, when he's dialed in, is great. It's just, is he going to give a shit about basketball? If he doesn't, he's going to lose them games. He's going to use up bad possessions. He's going to be disinterested on the court, and he's going to let guys blow by him for easy buckets. If he is engaged, he's going to be a defensive anchor. And if they ever decide to play a Twin Towers lineup with him and Rudy Gobert, they're going to be incredible in the paint. Are they ever going to do it? I don't know. But I'd like to see them try. And I think Mike Conley is the kind of guy that might be able to unlock a guy like Hassan Whiteside. Conley's been through it all. He's a guard that makes the guys around him better. And he's, he might be a little bit on his last leg, like he's kind of old, but he hasn't lost that much of a step since his Memphis days. And I think he's still got a couple deep runs left in him. And I want to see it happen because Mike Conley is, by all reports, one of the great guys in basketball.
I was gonna say, I feel like
I don't want the Jazz to win a title because I hate the Jazz, but I like when Mike Conley succeeds.
He's Mike Conley's an older guy that I think his age didn't impact him on the court, but more his time off the court because of injuries. Like he spent more time off the court because of that. But when he is on the court, dude is a baller. He missed some time in the playoffs last year, but I mean, you can't deny his impact when he's on there. And yeah, the Jazz have just always been a really similar to the Hawks, similar to the Spurs, similar to the Pacers, where they just like constantly fill their roster with guys at every position that can buy into what the coach is doing, be impact players and contribute. They've always been one of those franchises. I do like why you have the Nuggets higher. I think we'll figure that out why. Maybe a guy that just signed a max contract there is going to help fill the role. But yeah, I mean, 2 in this division, but they could still also be 2 in the West. So it's not like you're really putting them down too much, with the Nuggets being the team that could easily win the West too. So it's just very, really talented at the top of this division.
I mean, it's and that's always been the case for the West. It's at the top of the division, these teams are incredible. And the Jazz are an incredible team, and I'm not trying to take anything away from them whatsoever. I think they're going to be very good this year. I think they're going to be a 50-win team, but I don't think that they're going to lead the division like they did in previous years.
And shout out to Joe Ingles, who looks like a construction worker playing basketball.
Yeah, but a construction worker who can fucking stroke.
Yeah, I love when he jingles people, when he's just, it's just
you've been jingled.
Most unafflicting, but another good, aesthetically pleasing left-handed jump shot, which I just love to see.
He has a really, really clean stroke, and he's another guy that I like to watch because he can do it all with a hand in his face. And he doesn't only like a lot of people just think about him as a 3-point shooter. He can score from everywhere on the court. He has a really, really good bag, and he's got a lot of tricks, and he's got he's always had an old man game, even when he was a younger player, where he can get separation and he can lull guys into a false sense of security, and then he can beat them off the dribble. Like him and Conley both have really aesthetically pleasing offensive games. And then Jordan Clarkson is another dude. He may have never reached the heights that maybe they thought he would when he got drafted, but he's a microwave scorer who has an insane bag. Like, he has absolute confidence everywhere on the court, even undeserved confidence.
So there's definitely times where he gets outshined, but yeah. I mean, Ingles is a very solid player and has been good for a long time.
All right.
And I mean, we can finish this up pretty quick, especially for me with the Bucks.
Yeah. Especially
since I don't even want to talk about how good they are.
They're incredible.
They look better than they did last year. Grayson Allen is a piece that fits so well in that team. And then the guy I really wanted to talk about is Jordan Nwora, who was a guy that they were talking about in the offseason, maybe playing more of a role where he can step up and get some points. And with DiVincenzo being out, Ojale not playing, Bobby Portis not playing, Drew Holiday getting hurt in the first half of the last game, he had to step up. And there were plenty of times where down the rotation, shot clock's winding down, they're making a design play for Nora to take the isolation. And he took advantage of it a lot. I mean, Giannis is the best player in the league right now. As much as I want to say it's Kevin Durant, I don't think I've seen anyone miss a shot quite like Kevin Durant can, because it just freaking hits every part of the rim possible, and you're like, how did that not go in?
Yeah,
but
he has frustrating misses because you're like, this is literally the universe just deciding that this shot is not perfect.
So I literally, it's amazing. I'm so spoiled watching a game where it's like, if he puts up a shot, I just expect it to swoosh. But Giannis is that same way, where I feel like I wish it didn't, but it always does. Brooke Lopez, leading scorer all time in the Nets. He's a bucket. Chris Middleton is a transition monster. If they're coming down the court and Chris Middleton has the ball, he's going to pull it from three and it's a swish 70% of the time, I swear. And then even in the half court, dude can get his own bucket. He really likes working around that free throw line. He'll get like in that zone, and if he has a jump shot there, it's unstoppable. And then like every other possession while Giannis is out there, clear out, get Giannis on a mismatch, whoever they want to throw against him, see if they're able to. They probably can't. And Giannis has added that hook shot from about like 7 to 10 feet, which is just really good because he realized that he doesn't need to get all the way to the bucket to score. He just needs to get around it, and then he can elevate just bigger than the guys around him. And his one dribble free throw, I mean, he looked really comfortable from the line, and that's a dangerous combination.
Only 6 or 7 seconds on that free throw too.
Yeah, and he looked really good.
You gotta respect the guy who knows his weaknesses and immediately sets to work on them. And I love that he's talked openly about the fact that he went to a sports psychologist about it.
Yeah,
because I think a lot of guys would, and I'm not like a huge like therapy will fix everyone kind of thing, but like if you're being watched by tens of millions of people on a regular basis and you're competing at the absolute top of your profession, give it a shot. If there's something about your game that is fucking with you mentally, sports psychologists can only help you unlock it. And for him to be an already multi-time MVP and be like, I'm gonna get this much better, you gotta respect it.
Yeah, shout out to Dak Prescott writing "Ask for Help" on all of his tape. Yeah. I've seen that come up a lot, but just
shout out to Ted Lasso for talking about that as well in the past 2 seasons, especially this past one.
Barbecue sauce.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to say about the Bucks roster that hasn't been said better by a million other people at this point. They're deep basically at every position. When Bobby Portis gets back, they've got great scorers at every position. Or multiple great scorers at every position, I should say.
Pat Connaughton had a freaking game.
They're
George
one of the most
talented
talented defensive teams in the league. They're at the same time one of the most talented offensive teams in the league. They're just a deadly combo in pretty much every way. In transition from the half court, the vast majority of their team is good free throw shooters, and now if Giannis becomes a good free throw shooter, what the fuck? The majority of their team can stroke from three, like.
And if you have to inbound, imagine the end of the game.
Weaknesses. Yeah. And the whole thing is the weakness that a lot of people saw was their coaching. Was that Mike or that Budenholzer was not a championship coach. He was an early playoff exit coach. They just won a championship with him, and he adjusted throughout the playoffs, and he did what people wanted him to do. And these guys are not running up crazy minutes over the course of the year, so they're going into the playoffs fairly fresh.
Mm-hmm.
I said that before, the Heat are my dark horse to make the finals. The Bucks have to be everyone's. It's them and the Nets, depending on health. Like,
I think the Bucks are the favorite right now. I mean, we
talked
about privately. We talked about privately. I thought, I don't know what the hell Steve Nash was doing. I mean, we've lost the last 6 games in Milwaukee, so I just want to get the fuck out of there. I don't want to play in Milwaukee.
Don't go back to Milwaukee.
But I just think they looked really dominant. I have them. They're 54.5. I'm going 60 and 22. I think 60 is low for how good this team can be. And then we didn't talk about Semi Ojeleye. one of Bill Simmons's favorite players from the Celtics, that he's another just on an already amazing defensive team where you have so many offensive options. You're just adding another guy that can really help. I mean, in the paint last night, I just think of every team. I'm like, what team can stop the Bucks in the paint? And I don't think there's a lot. And as a Nets fan, the way that game went down, Bucks are my favorite to make it out of the East right now. As of October 21st, 8:05 Eastern, that was a standard time.
Sure. Yeah. Eastern time. Eastern time. Whatever. All right. Well, the Bucks are very good, and everyone knows they're very good, and they're going to continue to be very good, assuming Giannis doesn't get hurt. And even if Giannis does get hurt, they're probably going to win like 45 games.
He could probably snap his arm back into place or something. He's a
the guy's a cyborg. I mean, he's the new LeBron. He's a longer, taller LeBron. Not as good of a shooter, obviously, and hasn't been as this level since he was 16. But he's a freak, and he's going to be an all-time great. He already is an all-time great.
Yeah.
Moving back to the Northwest Conference for my number one team. There it is. Everyone knows who it is. You know who's left. It's the Nuggets, led by Jokic. Vegas has
Coca-Cola.
Vegas has them at 47.5 wins, largely probably in part because of injuries to the team. Jamal Murray's injury in particular. I've got them at 51 wins, so I've got them just above the Jazz. I've got the Jazz at 50. I've got the Nuggets at 51. I think they're going to be right there with each other. And obviously other injuries could really hamstring this team. But I think Jokic is the kind of guy that can unlock potential in basically anyone playing next to him. They've got a fairly deep team as well. Austin Rivers is probably like their 8th best player. And Austin Rivers, despite what people say about him, is a very good player. Will Barton can do it at every level. Michael Porter Jr., great scorer, not great defensively. Wish he would get vaccinated. But
he's got a jumper
and a guy that can score at every level. Yeah. I mean, as long as he stays healthy, he's a fucking monster. Jeff Green, Uncle Jeff, not necessarily the guy you want playing center at this point in his career, but a super talented.
He looked really good last night.
And he is incredibly. He's a very good player, and he's had an incredible career. But I don't know if I necessarily want him to be a 35-minute per night kind of guy. He's had health issues in the past. He's also getting up there in years. Aaron Gordon, who we talked about earlier, that's the guy that Matt referenced that just signed a big extension. One of my favorite players in basketball. I think he's going to unlock this team. I think he can kind of, again, another guy, just like Jeremy Grant, that can do everything at a high level and can defend, if not necessarily all 5 positions, he can defend 4 of them pretty well, and the 5th if he needs to for a while, because he's strong, he's athletic, he's fast, lateral movement is insane, and he's got great hands and great instincts. I don't think this team has taken a significant step back this year, and they finished 3rd last year with 47 wins. Obviously, again, this is a full season now. I think it's totally reasonable for them to be in the low 50s. Obviously, Jamal Murray's injury affects that, but Jokic may take another step. And he's a young guy. He's achieving his physical prime. He's spending more time on his body than he ever did. I think there's more he can do.
There's few players where it's like LeBron, Luka, Jokic, Harden as guys where I see like you put them on the floor and they could be floor generals and make players that were not great players on other teams great players because they're getting open looks and rhythm. They can work the offense around him. I mean, Jokic is making passes that people say like point guards haven't been able to make, and his vision is just insane. And I think
it helps that he's taller than the vast majority of guys that he's going against. Yeah, like he can see the whole court in a way that a 6'2" guard can't. He's got 9 inches on a Dame Lillard.
And like him and Jamal Murray's pick and roll, that's the reason why it's unstoppable. It's because Murray is a really good shooter and a really talented player. But I think Jokic on his own can easily carry that team to the top of this division.
I am genuinely of the belief that if you put Jokic and 4 bench players out there every night for 82 games, they probably win 40 of them. And I'm talking like legitimate bench players, not like 6 man of the year contenders, guys that could be starters but are playing reduced minutes because they're just hot hands. I'm talking legitimate bench guys. I think he is just such an elevator. Like he's a floor raiser and a ceiling raiser in a way that very few guys are. And a
You
lot
got
of
to
that
put together,
is
yeah.
his physical abilities, being as big as he is and being able to work from the spots that he can work at, where other guys that are playing point forward or point guard can't do it. And I don't think they're going to win the West. I don't think they're going to go crazy deep in the playoffs because I think Jamal Murray is a big loss when you get into the playoffs and defenses lock you down and the game slows down and you need a 1 and 2 scoring punch to really get you through stuff. But I think that they're going to wreck a lot of teams this regular season.
Mm. No, I completely agree. Jokic is a special player. They got a lot of well-rounded pieces around him. I mean, the Nuggets are really good. Jazz are really good, but I just think Jokic is one of those players that you put at the top 3 guys. If you're a GM and you had to ask all the GMs, what are the top players that you can pick and build a franchise around? I think Jokic. I think Luka might be 1 right now, but like Jokic, easy 2, if not a lot of GMs, I think, say they want to build them around Jokic.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's probably
and that's with Giannis. That's with everyone.
I think he might be an easier guy to build around than Giannis.
Yeah, because Jokic can shoot a 3. Yeah. And he's always been good at the free throw line.
And Jokic doesn't necessarily need a guy to work the pick and roll with him to be effective from a lot of points in the court. Whereas Giannis does a lot of his best work as a roll man.
I love watching the Nuggets because Jokic will just have the ball right at the top of the key. Like, he'll stand right above the free throw line with the ball above his head and just everyone else is running around and he'll find the guy that he needs to find. And he always, I mean, it's special. He's really good.
All right. Well, we have completely finished our preseason predictions on which teams are going to be good. Granted, it's 2 days into the season, but that's okay. You know, it is starting a little bit earlier than it does most years. Usually it starts a little bit closer to Halloween, so we've still got about 10 days to go till then. If you enjoyed these preseason predictions or if you're hanging out in chat, make sure you hit the follow button. If you're watching us on YouTube, like I said earlier, hit that subscribe button so you can see any of our future episodes. We're trying to do this weekly, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, depending on how the season goes, and, of course, our own schedules. Matt, as always, absolute pleasure doing this with you. I'm going to go walk my dog, and I'm going to a Bill Burr show in about an hour. So I've got to jump off, and I got to make some moves. But if you're hanging out, appreciate you being here, and we will see you next week.
Had a great time as always, GQ. Can't wait to do it again.
Hell yeah. Have a good one, man.
Adios.